So then she asked me, "Do you love me?" And I said, "No. That's a really nice ski mask."
Every time with that one, man. It's incredible.
Oh, are we live right now?
I think so, yeah. That's fine. Now, we're still talking about Ring of Honor, I think. We'll be professional for a moment. I do want to quickly make a statement up front here. I often have said this show is cursed, which is very generous, really, because it suggests it's bad luck and not poor planning on my own part. I booked Robert O'Neill for another show tonight without realizing that he was supposed to be on this show. I scheduled him to watch Dark live with the confirmed shoot over on Patreon. That's starting in about an hour, so you got some time here. And then I was like, oh, shit. Bob does the Ring of Honor show with us. That means he's going to be on both shows at once, 2 StreamYards. He's not here. On his behalf, I'll just say that his suggestions were they should run theme parks and book Brock Lesnar. So that was Bob's... that's what he had to provide tonight. Anyway, Ring of Honor is coming back officially. Supercard of Honor has got a date and a location, right? Has it got a location? It has, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Pretty big one too, right?
It's part of WrestleMania weekend, yeah.
Yeah. So we thought tonight, or today for you guys, that we would kind of plot what this looks like in an ideal world as well as what we expect it to look like. So I have some topics to kind of go through and like just different things. Let's try and piece this together. I guess we'll start with the news, right? Supercard of Honor is happening. Stephen Jensen, your initial reaction to that news?
Very happy. And it's one of those things where like we're seeing obviously a lot of Ring of Honor presence, especially in Impact Wrestling now.
Yes.
And that was the hope, right? Was we're seeing all these people from Ring of Honor popping up. Hopefully they're not like carrying on the company and the name of the company and their titles for no reason. And now it seems like there actually are very much indeed plans of them continuing in April. So I'm really happy about it.
Jeremy Lambert?
I mean, when they announced the hiatus, they said they were going to come back at this time. And that was always the plan, right? Now they've given the date, they've got the venue and everything. I hope that it continues to move forward. When I listened to Joe Koff on the ROH Strong podcast, he said, they're going to continue to work on stuff and they're going to have everything laid out. Like Jensen said, I don't think they would be defending these titles and doing these title matches if there wasn't a reason, if there wasn't a purpose to eventually return. And that's where they're going forward. And I imagine we'll get into sort of where those titles are going to end up being, who they're going to end up being with as we get into Supercard.
Yeah, so a couple things. What day is this relative to WrestleMania week? Like what?
It's April 1st, which I believe is Friday.
This could also be a gigantic April Fool's joke then.
That would be imagine April Fool's comes and you get to the building and you go, we're closing down, folks. This has been a great time. We had some fun here this last few months, but it's over. So it's happening on the Friday. So it's not clashing with night 1 or night 2 of WrestleMania.
Right. No. It's clashing with an Impact special.
Yeah, and SmackDown, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So that's fine, whatever. Now, do we have information on the distribution? Is this going to be a live pay-per-view? Or is this going to be just a live show that's used for TV? Because because this is a big part of this whole thing, right? From what we've heard, it sounds like they're going to run a show a month, tape TV, air TV. That'll be about it, right? And they'll book month to month, bring in independent guys, bring in some contracted guys that can work it. I'm really intrigued if Supercard of Honor is the same or is going to be a pay-per-view out of the gate.
Well, they're calling it a pay-per-view extravaganza. So
that's interesting because that would suggest they're still doing the big pay-per-views with the big price tag.
Yeah.
I mean, I generally, and I'm intrigued where you're at on this, gents, I think that's probably necessary for the bigger shows, right? You need some form of live viewing. But then that would suggest, like, I guess my question is, are they going to double dip here? Ask the hardcore fans to buy it and then air it on TV for the old folks that have Sinclair, or are we going to get extra TV? What do you think they're going to do here, Jensen?
I'm not sure. Like, I don't think it's a bad idea to just do monthly, but if they can get a few TVs out of that to kind of build the monthly pay-per-views, like that makes sense. And those should absolutely be free. But I understand them wanting to do pay-per-view, especially if it's an affordable price. You know, if it isn't like a $50 pay-per-view,
Right.
you know, if it's like in the 20s or 30s or something, I think that's pretty fair, because we're seeing that the audience is there and they're willing to pay for shows like this. Like Game Changer Wrestling is the best example of it.
Yeah.
You know, people are willing to pay $15-20, sometimes multiple times a month for the GCW weekend shows and stuff like that. And I feel like they're going to have a lot of overlapping talent with a lot of the biggest names that are proven draws in these type of pay-per-views already and stuff. So I think that they definitely should, I guess, as you say, kind of double dip, but like keep anything that's related to just building stories free. And I'm okay with them doing pay-per-view, you know, as long as the shows are like they're saying, if they're going to be really like super indies and they can get the right names and the right people with enough buzz, I think it'll be worth paying for.
Yeah, I want to talk a little about talent later on here. So I think we can all agree, and you mentioned GCW, I think we can all agree that in an ideal world, in a vacuum, the way to build Ring of Honor would not be through TV. I think you would run shows, right? Unfortunately, and this is just the way it is, and there's no point ignoring it, like, the company is a Sinclair company, so there's going to be some form of TV. That's the only use it has for Sinclair is weekly TV. I think, you know, I use the phrase double dip there, and it's like, I think the other guy that was booking for a little bit had this idea, and that, you know, was rightly short-lived. But I think there's something to be said for just running an event company and just using that for your TV footage, because the truth of it is, look, if they are actually doing 500,000 television viewers, none of those people are in the wrestling bubble that are going to buy like the events. So you can literally have two audiences. Do I believe they're doing 500 viewers? Yes, 500. Yes, 500,000. Not so much.
Right. Well, so are you essentially saying, just so I'm clear on what you're saying, is you are you basically saying that they should run their pay-per-views, the hardcore audience pays for that to watch it live, and then they take a few matches through, and that's what their free television
that's
is?
That's what I would suggest. And in your mind, you would think, hopefully we show these matches and we get some of that audience to become a paying customer.
That's a good idea, yeah.
When I say pay-per-view, though, and this is where it gets a little bit messy, right? To me, the way to do this would be an investment into Honor Club. And rather than traditional pay-per-view, you just say, if you give us your $10 a month for Honor Club, you get the archives and you get the live events. Now, look, that's an undertaking. And if we're being frank, they've not shown that level of investment in Honor Club. But when you see the excitement people have for a WWE or AEW buying the tape library, the interest is there. They need to weaponize that. That's their biggest strength, right? The ROH tape library is valuable. I think my personal, and this is an ideal world, my personal play would be, let's go through it with Honor Club and let's make it simple to our hardcore fan. This $10 gets you everything. You're going to see every show. And then whoever we have out there that still is watching these, you know, the syndicated shows, they'll get this stuff anyway, and hopefully they'll eventually subscribe to Honor Club and we can drive the business that way. That's where my mind is at. I don't know how easy done that is. I'm sure it would, you know, cost some money to really go in on streaming like that. But man, do I think it would be nice for a wrestling company to just be able to say, listen, if you don't have cable, whatever, if you give us your money on this streaming service, you get everything. I don't think many companies can say that right now, right? So that intrigues me. I don't know, Jeremy, where are you at on this?
That's sort of – so when the NWA came back, they did the whole – they took Power off of YouTube. They put it behind the paywall on Fight TV, and it was like $5 a month. And you get – basically 4 new episodes of Power for $5 a month. You still had to pay $40, $30, whatever it was, for their pay-per-views. The Power episodes were worse than ever, and like they expected people to pay for this. Right. I don't know how well it performed. It seemed like, based on what people who are gonna say that it did well. But they've now moved to sort of what you're talking about, Joseph, is like it's just an annual subscription. It's like $40, $50 a year. And you get all of the Power episodes. You get those first run. You get the pay-per-view events. Those are not a separate charge now. Like, they're included with that. It seems like the archive stuff is up there from Power. And like, that's pretty much what I would think. Like you said, like that would be the way to go with Honor Club as well. Now, is this feasible money-wise? I don't know, because Nick Aldis was saying we kind of had to do this with Power because we lost so much money during the pandemic and we don't know if we would have stayed afloat. And obviously
Right.
they weren't spending money on talent. So, ROH is actually going to invest a little bit in the talent that they're going to get here. So I don't know if that model is like very feasible monetarily. How much are they getting from Sinclair? How much does Sinclair expect from them? My guess is like Sinclair is just probably happy that they're just getting any type of content and they're not going to be like, oh, we need live first run stuff. If that's the case, I'm with you. Show highlights. Maybe you throw in like a first run multi-man match that you taped as like a dark match, or
bonus,
you actually do hold like a television taping in a smaller venue or whatever, and it's just a lot of like multi-man matches and whatnot. Maybe you do one big match that you sort of build to on a special television episode of like, hey, this is something that we're a big singles match, big tag team match that like you really build to, and you build it up through promos and whatnot on television in the weeks coming up, something like that. But I would try to do something like that more than what they've been doing.
So I'm interested where you're at on this, Jensen, the model thing, and I'll throw it to you in a second. One thing I will say is, God bless the National Wrestling Alliance. They have no tape library, right? Like you mentioned, they have the Power archives, but like, how many times can you watch Eddie Kingston and Ricky Starks promos before you've seen it? I mean, like, it's sad because it's the NWA, which was formed in like 1948, but there is no tape library. They don't own any of that stuff, really. Ring of Honor's tape library is awesome. So you could do something. Anyway, Jensen, where are you at on this as we kind of look ahead here? And this is our plan, right? Where are you at on that as the model, the one that we've just been talking about?
I love the idea that you laid out of doing like a $10 a month or $15, whatever they want to charge for, as long as the price is low and low, relatively speaking, $10 or whatever. But I think that works really well for the fans and for the company, because if you're charging $10, let's say that you're me and I immediately I'm like, here's my $10 a month. I'm down. Like at the very least, I just want to watch the pay-per-views live, and it's only $10. Like that's a win as far as I'm concerned right there. And then the added bonus for me as a fan is having access to the back catalog, all the classic Ring of Honor stuff that I could watch. And you might look at that and go, from like the outside looking in, you might say, well, what's the, but then they're just going to give away all those things you paid $10 for free on television over the next few weeks, conflict of interest. How does this help? How does this work? I think it's really smart because, like y'all said, if you have people who aren't paying that $10 a month, and at the very least, you can convert some people to go, well, it's worth $10 for the pay-per-view. Like these matches have been really good. I'm willing to pay $10 for a pay-per-view. And then on top of that, they realize like, oh, like I'm already here watching the pay-per-view. I can watch the back catalog too. And like now you're like creating an actual fan of this company more than just like a one-off pay-per-view buy. So I think that's, and then of course, as a company, it's smart because you're at least getting people to, you're attempting to convert people that were watching for free to at least pay $10 to your company that you weren't getting beforehand.
Yeah. And it feels like the big challenge with that, and this is an art form, and we're seeing GCW do it right now, the schedule would have to be strong, right, and varied. Like if you see GCW in 12 days, whatever it is, when they run Hammerstone, we're all going to watch that. But the reason that brand has strength isn't because of one-off big shows. It's because they're always doing shows. They're not like so Ring of Honor would have to return to its roots in the most true sense, in that once upon a time, Ring of Honor was, like every weekend, it was like a couple of these shows with these names that were being thrown on them, and like mixing up the cards and stuff. And look, I joked about Gabe coming back to Ring of Honor and stuff, but bless the man, he did an incredible job of that at Ring of Honor's height. The way he would mix those cards up, which is a hard thing to do, much harder than booking one big pay-per-view card every 3 months. So you'd have to, I guess the next subject is schedule, and it's like you'd have to run, I think, at least 2 shows a month that felt kind of, maybe not like final battles, but had some matches on them, Ideally more than that eventually, but how feasible, Jeremy, do you think, from a talent perspective and frankly, from a drawing perspective, that is? Because I think one event's going to be slim, unfortunately.
I see. I think one big event like that is going to be easier than like if you try the GCW model where you're running shows every weekend, because I mean, look, if they're paying better than all of these companies, then people are going to go where the money is and everything, right? But there's so much wrestling every single weekend that trying to book these guys every weekend and if you are trying to like shoot any type of television, any type of angle or whatnot, are you going to be able to get a lot of these guys consistently? It could be kind of tough. Like there aren't that many. This is why so many companies like only run one event per month and things like that, because they just can't get these guys consistently. GCW is kind of able to do it in more on a more consistent basis. So they've carved out a nice spot for themselves. But now if ROH is trying to enter that picture, you're going to have talent that is just kind of committed to ROH to do that. And maybe they do have enough talent to do that. I mean, I think there are certain guys and girls that will make that commitment to just ROH. But like, if you're going to use some talent, like they might have an Impact taping that week, and then some people just might not want to work a schedule where it's like, okay, I'm away every single weekend. Like they might want to actually have that downtime. I feel like it could be tougher now because there just are so many independent companies.
Absolutely, and you'd have to, honestly, to do it properly, you would have to have like a big pool of talent. Like you'd be paying them per appearance, but you'd have to have like a big group that you're willing to use, right? Because if you're booking a match card, let's say you need 20 guys a show. Let's say you'd need to build a product, and Ring of Honor once upon was like this. You'd need to build a product where there's only a handful that are on every show. Like it's Gresham and co. Like the rest of them just kind of rotate in and out based on availability. Jensen, what do you think? Again, in an ideal world, we're at the helm here. What does that schedule look like as you're trying to get Honor Club rolling?
See, that's the whole thing, is like the availability. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out for a lot of these talents, because in an ideal world, you would be able to get commitments from, because like how GCW does it, like y'all have mentioned, they're not giving out like exclusivity contracts or anything like that, but they have their core group of people that are always at their big shows. And it's because GCW is the number 3 company in the US. Like they're like, why wouldn't they do that? Like the only thing that I think that they would prioritize maybe over GCW was like the WWE or AEW gave them a contract. Otherwise it's like GCW above everything for most of them. With Ring of Honor, I think that you could have that. And I think there are people like Jonathan Gresham who are going to be willing to give you their word that they're going to be there. But there's going to be this interesting balance where if Ring of Honor isn't giving out contracts and you're getting like verbal commitments from people that you trust, and like they don't have any intention of like screwing you over or anything like that. But I mean, if you're like a Jonathan Gresham, for instance, and you're Ring of Honor all the way and you've given them your word and all this stuff, but there's no contract, and then AEW is like, hey, we got a 6-7 figure deal for you here. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things like that's the thing. Like smaller, lesser known indie names, I think it would be a huge step up for a lot of them to be able to get on a Ring of Honor show. So I think they're not going to have any trouble like getting talent to fill out their cards. But it's going to be a matter of like those bigger names, the ones that I think would prioritize a GCW over Ring of Honor if it came down to it, and that kind of stuff. Like how many people are so brand loyal to Ring of Honor that for sure you have that core group of people that you can count on. I just don't know how that looks like yet.
Yeah, I mean, even I think in the most idyllic version of this, it would be a headache, right? Because it's just going to be. If you have no one on paper, they run into this back in the day, right? Like this is a thing. So I think it's worth, that part's definitely a kind of asterisk. Now, here's the other thing. Right now, I assume, I'm not sure where you guys are at. I think they're going to just kind of do like, they're doing Texas. They'll do a taping in Baltimore. They'll do one in Philly. Like, they'll just do that once a month right now. Is that what you expect, Jeremy, when they come back?
They're definitely gonna run Baltimore into the ground.
Indeed.
They're gonna run Baltimore. I guess they'll run Philly, but man, the last time Philly wasn't great either. What's to say they don't almost piggyback off of some of the bigger WWE shows or something, and they run, because WWE is kind of moving to like a Friday or a Saturday schedule now. I guess that'd be heading against SmackDown, but like SmackDown's going to draw your WWE fans. You can run a show that is more of your hardcore wrestling fans that'll want to go to ROH, or maybe you run something on Sunday if WWE is going to run these Saturday shows. But like, they might be better off like piggybacking off of something like that than trying to almost create their own territory right now and running Philadelphia, Texas, things like that. Because like that don't really work. Bless Impact, but like Impact tries that and they don't get too much out of that.
That is, in fact, like they've obviously been doing live events as well traditionally, but TV wise, they've just kind of bounced around, right? Like they'll just advertise, we're doing a TV champion in this spot. That'll be the next month for TV, and that's why I assume it's what they'll do. Jensen, what are your thoughts on the viability of that? Any alternatives, etc.?
I think that they should piggyback off AEW and GCW, like because they have overlapping talent with those companies. Like, so if you are a Jonathan Gresham and you do get to a position at some point, which is happening currently, like I'm sure there's plenty of companies that are offering him plenty of things. If he takes that deal, for instance, with like AEW, because you got to get paid at the end of the day and like know that this money's coming in, like it's a good decision for a lot of reasons. But also you can be like, if it doesn't conflict and it's, close enough vicinity wise, show to show, that's the great thing about being a part of the Forbidden Door or whatever, is AEW lets a lot of their talent wrestle really wherever they want to, as long as it isn't conflicting with AEW events. Right. So if they were following AEW or GCW and they had talent that could do both shows if they wanted to, I think that would really benefit, because if you're like Ring of Honor on the other side of the country, if this happens, for instance, it happens with AJ Gray sometimes, where he'll be on the West Coast doing like big things over there for either GCW or West Coast Pro or something he's got going on over there. But he'll be advertised for a show in like Tennessee like that weekend. Yeah. And sometimes like you just can't make both because it's just too far logistically. I think if the closer you are together to companies like this, the better for the smaller company.
I agree with that completely. I think that's actually the best. I think that's the best option. My interest is, this is kind of an outside call, but I'm intrigued by it. I wonder how feasible it is to have a home base, like not like a nostalgia television studio, but a nice building that you don't need to put too many people in for it to look good. Ideally with some, some bleachers rather than everyone sitting in a flat fucking building, which is always brutal on TV. Like, I wonder if they could pull that off. But rather than using it for the purpose of tape and television, run the events there. And then you venture out for Best in the World, Final Battle, Death Before Dishonor. Like that, the building they were using in Baltimore. Like that kind of setup, maybe a little bit, because sometimes those empty seats were very striking, but pull it in a little bit. I wonder if that's something they could explore. Because if so, it could make their bigger events easier draws, right? If they wasn't on the road every other week and they only left, say Baltimore, if they only left there once every 2-3 months, you would hope in an ideal world, if those shows at home are good, that they're going to draw better on the road eventually. Whether that be the case or not, I mean, at this point,
that's what TNA tried for so long too, or kind of played with, was they had the TNA Asylum in Nashville, that was their home base, and they had their home base in Orlando, and sometimes their shows outside of Orlando and Nashville were a lot bigger, and especially when they go to other countries and stuff, they do like really well in the UK and stuff. And so I think, but it all comes down to where it is, like how, like if you went to the right town, if you went to places like Baltimore and stuff, like places that you knew it was going to work, like, or the fan base is proven there that they're going to be a loyal fan base. I think that's a possibility to do something like that. But once again, you'd have to pick the right location. Otherwise, the whole thing is that would be really sad. Because another great example is the NWA. You almost kind of alluded to it a second ago, but like, I live very close to where they tape NWA, and nobody knows it's happening. Nobody. So like, that's a problem.
You definitely would have to. I mean, we've seen the studio setting an idea for TV a whole lot. I don't think it's been done before where you use it as just like your base for events. Like you'd be streaming live let's say every 2 weeks again, because that's like a modest target, I think. Man, I don't know. I think, and again, it's all difficult for us to get a read on how feasible this is logistics-wise, right? Like we don't know how expensive that would be, what that looks like. But unfortunately, the indication as they went back on the road was that they were not doing particularly well, unfortunately. And like, I think that product was pretty good over this last 18 months, but the kind of interest would suggest that people wasn't watching it to find out. So just different ideas, because I know it would be, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't want to sit here and be like, go on the road every week, guys, but I know full well, like,
that wouldn't work.
Exactly. So that's why I'm kind of kicking around different stuff. Now, this one is really interesting because I know for a fact Jeremy and I have talked about this on the air before, and it's very fitting today. Because the next thing I want to talk about is the product, right? We just saw today this Terminus rule set post.
Yeah,
and
the greatest promotion of all time.
This fascinates me because this is something we talked about with Ring of Honor a year and more ago, you know? The idea of let's embrace the pure wrestling thing. With Gresham as world champion, he can kind of combine the pure belt and the world title. You know, he can make that the whole promotion. I wonder how close to that rule set Ring of Honor could come without being too much. Because it is a lot, right? Like, I get why some people read it and just like, Jesus, I can't do this. I personally popped for it. I don't know how many wrestlers are going to enjoy it other than Gresham himself. Time will tell. We'll find out in a few days. Jensen, any thoughts on like the idea of Ring of Honor exploring a really like, you know, kind of nerdy pure rules rule set? Do you think that's a good idea or something they should stay away from?
Honestly, I think it's a good idea, and if it isn't working, they just have to pivot very fast. You know, like if it isn't going over well, but like I'm pumped for Terminus. Like I'll be there next week or this weekend. You know, like I saw the rule set and I was like, this is cool because it's different. Like it's way more like a quote unquote real sport. I'm not saying that's better or worse than sports entertainment or what you're getting out of other companies, but it's different, and that's what I think the wrestling business really needs right now out of some of these smaller companies that are startups and stuff, because with something like Terminus is going to do so well because the talent they're bringing in is proven talent that are great at all facets and all types of wrestling. And then you just kind of put them in a different environment with different rules. And it's something that's totally different than what you're going to see when you see them in other shows. And I think if you have the right talent to do it and you can just be something different, like I even give the NWA credit for that. Like, I don't think that they're a particularly great show or anything, but I give them credit for at least being something different. Like they aren't, when you watch it, it's different than watching other companies, the way they present it and stuff. So I personally, I love what they're doing with Terminus. And I think that Ring of Honor, they pretty much kind of already setting that expectation, because a lot of the time when Gresham's out there defending the Ring of Honor title, he's doing it under pure rules right now. So I do personally think that would be a really good idea to go that kind of direction. What about you, Jeremy?
Well, when we talked about like the talent and the pool that they would pull from, like this is where it almost differs from a GCW, where GCW, they'll give you a little bit of everything on the show. They'll give you your scrambles. They'll give you your death matches. They'll give you some just like straight pure wrestling and stuff. If Ring of Honor is just going to go like, hey, we just kind of want pure wrestling, technical wrestling, maybe a little bit of strong style stuff, they're going to limit their pool a little bit more, because Jonathan Gresham may have mentioned this in our interview. A lot of guys who just want to go out there and just do flips and shit. And that stuff, it, depending on what their product wants to look like, might not just completely fly with the style that Ring of Honor wants to present. And so I don't know if they can fully embrace that like Terminus is really doing. And I mean, look, a guy like Bandito is on the Terminus card. I don't think anybody's ever going to be like, this is a great technical wrestler who's going to trade hold for hold with you or anything. So there's obviously room for stuff like that. But it would, if they would go full into something like that, they would be limiting themselves a little bit. And I just don't know if that's going to completely work.
Something that I think could be kind of cool though is if there were more kind of specialty shows or companies like that, where maybe you saw someone like Bandito who's more of like a luchador, for instance, and they go into Terminus and just get smoked. like someone like Jonathan Gresham just destroys them under
roll.
pure. But then like they run it back in like AAA, and it's the other way around because it's like
Right.
it's a totally different style of wrestling. Like and something like that might be kind of cool. You know what I mean? Just like to kind of like highlight real. Because even a wrestler that's maybe lesser known, like someone like Robert Martyr, for instance, out of the Indies, I think he could have a really, really strong showing in a setting like Terminus against a bigger name that isn't known for grappling. So they're looking really good against bigger names and something they're really, really specialized at. But then in like the grand scheme of things, if you saw that same match in AEW Dark, it goes the other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Terminus, we all agree, is awesome, and it's really cool to have that. My thing for Ring of Honor, if it was my say, my choice, I think they need to find a nice middle ground. Like, don't commit to one style per se, because I think, frankly, what makes Jonathan Gresham so fabulous is that he's an outlier. You know, if everyone tries to wrestle bad versions of Jonathan Gresham matches, and it's not going to happen at Terminus, because Terminus, again, that's a different kind of thing. It's a special show, and they'll continue to be that way. For Ring of Honor, I think the challenge would be, how do we come up with a rule set that doesn't limit style? It just gives a sense of sport. So maybe you do something as simple as, 20-minute time limits for non-title, 30 for title. It goes to judges if there's no result. And immediately you just kind of give this sense of this is a sporting contest rather than like a free-for-all. I think you have to be careful with, this is just me personally. I didn't read the rules close enough to know what the take was on like dives and I should be back. Am I back?
You're back.
You have to be careful limiting dives and stuff, I think, because you just put yourself in a corner, So I think something where, like, you can kind of, at the start of the show every time, frame it as a sporting event without it being, like, a genre of in-ring wrestling. Like, it could be anything. You could have a guy like Shane Taylor who's more of a brawler, but he still has to wrestle within that. He still has to get that judge's decision if he doesn't get it done in 20, and then you can tell different stories of guys that are knockout artists. And I don't know. I think there's a way to do variety within the rule book that they want to have,
Real quickly on the Terminus stuff, there's no limiting of dives. It's just
Right.
you can't throw your opponent over the top rope, and if you go to the top rope, you've got to dive within 10 seconds. Like, it's
That's
pretty
fine.
clear of what they're actually doing. It's not like, oh, you can't do a bunch of like springboard moves and whatnot. It's just don't throw the opponent over the top rope, which fine, just throw them through the ropes, and don't stay on top too long to set up the spot where everybody catches you.
So I'm just pulling them up here. These, I would say, and I know you won't like this, Jeremy, I would say move the time limits for Ring of Honor, not for Terminus. Terminus is fine. I would move non-title to 20, title to 30. I think that's fine. 30 minutes is not crazy because, again, my pitch was judges, and like you don't want to do judges a lot. You actually very rarely want to do judges because people don't want that shit, right? So that's fine. That would, I guess, remove overtime, but you could still do it if you really want. I like the fouls thing.
So do I.
Like, I think there's something to that, and I've always liked it when a heel will like punch someone in a pure rules match and be like, "Got my one, my bad." I think there's actually, now that I look at it, 5-second countouts is probably a little tight on it, but then Ring of Honor does the 20 that's actually like 40, so maybe meet somewhere in the middle, guys, on that one. I really like it, and here's the other thing you could do. You could do the deal, and I think they used to do, I'm pretty sure at one point this was a thing, do the deal where it's like interference gets you banned from the promotion.
I think they said something like that.
Because like for Ring of Honor, like this, like AEW is great for giving finishes, but God, do they love an interference and a run-in. Like you could do that kind of deal where maybe you get yourself an out on the judges' scorecards when Bryan Danielson comes in and he loses by split decision to Jonathan Gresham, but at least you haven't got interference in their match. So that's something you can do. I think that's definitely something we all can agree. Like Ring of Honor needs to play around with that stuff, right? Like how can you be different without being too one-dimensional? That's the challenge.
Yeah, I also, for anyone watching this, I'd recommend checking out Paradigm Pro Wrestling. They do a lot of UWFI rules events on IWTV. Use code Fight Talk, and like I would highly recommend that because that's kind of a lot of what we're talking about. Where there's a lot of rules, and that's also on commentary to like be explaining what's going on, because I think that's really important when you're watching something that's a little bit different in wrestling, that you understand. Like I thought it was really good when Rick Abani, for instance, on the Impact on Hard to Kill, he was explaining why people weren't going for rope breaks at certain points in the match, because like you don't want to use them up, but you do want to get out of stuff and stuff. So, but yeah, check out Paradigm Pro, because I think a lot of people that might not quite understand what we're talking about here or kind of know what Terminus is going to be all about, I think a lot of it is going to be kind of similar to what they've been doing at Paradigm for a while.
That's a good call. So quickly, you brought up Ian, and this is very important. It seems like he's committed to doing whatever Ring of Honor wants to do. Please ensure if you're part of this project and somehow you're watching this video, Ian needs to be central in whatever you do, because that dude is a blessing. How good is he?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Tom did a really good job on Tom Hannafan.
Hannafan, I think is how you say it, yeah.
Tom Phillips did a really good job. I'm sorry, I don't want to, at least I can say that one right. It's the wrong name, but whatever. He did a really good job on Hard to Kill, but when Ian sat down, it was like, listen, levels to the game. That he's incredible commentator. So he's a real weapon in this too. You can use that guy to get this stuff over. He'll do it. He knows the history too. He's tremendous. So that's worth bringing up. Speaking of such, let's transition here a little bit to the talent. Now, obviously, this is always hard to do because we don't know what the budget is. We don't know what talent wants to be involved. However, there are some interesting conversation points that I think is worth hitting. Do we all agree that at this point in the game, it would probably help Ring of Honor to have some kind of dynamic with AEW? I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is that dynamic, especially with what we've pictured? Let's imagine we're going down the road we've gone, right? We've got Honor Club. We're going to run a few shows a month. We're going to give some guys some time in the ring. We're going to build the product on in-ring. We've, a defined rule set, but nothing too crazy. I'm fascinated by a promotion like Ring of Honor. I know people would hate this, but I'm just trying to be logical, okay? I'm fascinated by a company like Ring of Honor standing up and saying, hey, look, here's what we'll do. We'll give a guy like Lee Johnson or like Brock Anderson or like, I don't know, Anna Jay, young folk. Give them a chance to have longer matches on our shows. We'll feature them. Maybe they might be champ, but they'll be treated with respect. They'll be treated as hot prospects. And in return, each month, every 2 months maybe, we'd like a date on a big star. Because you're running events, right? So you can get this. You could say, we're running New York this month. Let's get Eddie Kingston. We're running North Carolina. Let's get FTR. That is the idea that in my head makes the most sense in terms of you kind of giving them something because it's a different setting and it's a place where guys can get reps in a worthwhile promotion where they're working good talent, but you also get a main event act every once in a while from AEW as kind of a trade-off. Where are you at? And again, this is all just us talking. I don't know nothing. Jeremy, where are you at on that as an idea?
I love it because I don't know if they're gonna, obviously, ideally, want somebody like a Danielson or a Punk to work one of these shows at some point. But I think for AEW, it's super beneficial because how often can you, if we talk about Dark and Dark Elevation, how often can you just do these short matches where, you kind of know what's going to happen? And Thunder Rosa doesn't need to be working 30-second squashes on Dark. That doesn't do much benefit for her. Anna Jay could use a good 7-minute match against Roxy, whoever they might have. I know Roxy's the champion right now. Willow, she could do a good 7-8 minute match against Willow, something like that. That would be very beneficial for her. And you look at that AEW roster. You mentioned the names who could just use some reps because they're not getting any television reps. And you mentioned the Lee Johnsons, the Brock Andersons, and guys like that. Then you just look at guys who just aren't on television or anything. You look at a guy like Lee Moriarty who can't get consistent TV time. Yeah. You take those guys and you put them out there and give them consistent bookings at a good promotion that they're gonna hopefully draw some fans and everything. And I think it's very beneficial to do something like that. I thought you were going to take it a different way I like your idea much better, by the way, of, all right, feature, some of our guys on TV. I don't think if you're AEW, you want to do that because you got enough people on TV. It's we don't really need a Briscoes match. I love the Briscoes, but if they're Ring of Honor guys, it's we don't really need that. It's certainly more beneficial for ROH to be like, yeah, give us FTR, let them work this date, let us do a match with OGK in North Carolina,
Right.
or something, and do something like that. I personally love that. I think it would be very beneficial to AEW, because I think AEW needs something like that, and they just cannot rely on just doing dark, because people aren't going to improve as fast just doing these 30-second squash matches on dark.
Right. And it's all moving too, right? Like if you're, there's some of these guys would feel like big stars as a guest. Like A-Shot mentioned Hook. Imagine Ring of Honor got the first non-AEW Hook booking. Like he came in and did a 5-minute squash. The place would go crazy for it. Jensen, where are you at on this as an idea, this kind of working relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea. It just it's weird because with AEW, in most cases, they already have had some sort of indie run and then are now in AEW. And I'm not against them continuing to work indies and getting more reps in, but I think it'd be way more beneficial in the case of a Hook or a Jade Cargill or someone like that, who didn't have an indie career that we've only really seen on AEW, and they do need somewhere to get reps. And you don't necessarily want to have them on dark all the time, because there's that perception, even though, all the big names in AEW are on dark at one point or another, like Hangman's on the show. But I think it's a little bit different perception if you're oh, Jade Cargill's going to be on dark this week, or oh, Jade Cargill's going to be on ROH this week and she's wrestling their champion kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's
longer match too, right?
In an actual match. And that's the same kind of thing with the indies. I think Hook you don't want to kill the mystique of a guy like Hook with what they're doing right now. But I think if he was to walk out in GCW or PWG or something like that and just throw some people around, the place would go nuts. Just getting more experience doing stuff. So.
Yeah, I know I'm biased, so it's an easy example, but I think it makes a lot of sense right now because he's working the GCW show in a week or so, and he just worked New Japan Strong a month ago that aired on Saturday because wrestling at Kingston, right? Now, if you imagine you're running out of a home base in, the East Coast, wherever, okay? And you get a couple dates on King, and you bring him in, you have him win a match, and you set up at the end of that show, you go off the air with a face-off, Gresh and Kingston. I'm not saying that does 100,000 pay-per-view buys. I'm not even saying it does 30. That would do so much for the promotion's intrigue for the kind of wider wrestling fan. It would help Gresham. I don't think AEW would be sweating him losing that match, Kingston. I don't think that's a big deal. There's a tier of guys that can lose, is my point. Kingston's the most obvious example because he works these shows.
And I just on AEW all the time. It just doesn't matter because he's so over. Yeah.
I just think there's a way in which you can kind of let's say the Briscoes did stick around in ROH, right? There's a way you could do the FTR match and have your guys go over without killing FTR because you'd have them beat every other team. It depends how much it depends how much you give them, right? Let's be honest, the AEW audience at this point, do we really think they're sweating guys losing at Ring of Honor? You're not going to have Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson lose all the time, and I get that, but generally. They want to see cool matches, the audience you're going for. Give them cool matches. AEW helps you in that regard. Quick thing, I want to circle back very briefly because this is important in terms of the model we laid out. When it comes to the streaming service, the big thing you'd have to pair with that, we talked about this on the air before, all three of us. The Nick Gage, John Moxley countdown show, that would have to be a full-time part of your model. Every show you'd have to pair with some kind of, here's the story, this is what you need to buy for.
And that's something that television-wise, you should put that stuff on TV too, though, because that'll help hopefully sell you more of subscriptions with Honor Club. Again, I don't know what type of content Sinclair is looking for, but you put some stuff like that on TV, you can continue to push people towards Honor Club. And that's the stuff I was talking about, where if you're going to build towards a big singles match on TV, do some stuff like that in your promos. And obviously, if you're building towards big pay-per-view matches, do some stuff like that on your television.
Yeah, because it's definitely... Well, I think sometimes people forget how many stories were told in the original Ring of Honor, right? Telling stories doesn't necessarily... And GCW, again, we've mentioned it a lot because it's true. I mean, there was just literally a video posted on Twitter about 2 hours before this that was like exceptional example of it. Telling stories doesn't necessarily mean you're doing television skits and, in backstage settings where you can tell stories in a range of ways. And that, those videos are an example. Like Jensen, you've probably seen the value of that more than any of us. I think the Gage Moxley one is the obvious example, right? But like, you can do a lot, man, with that promotion.
Yeah, and I think it's proven in UFC also. Like, even if you don't watch all the weekend UFC shows that are smaller, they have all those countdown shows and stuff that get people hyped up in between pay-per-views that get you to want to buy the pay-per-views and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea. I mean, and then to kind of circle back a little bit too about the perception, like, does AEW fans,
right?
How upset would they be to see people lose to people on the outside? John Moxley is I know I talk about GCW a lot, but it really is for this conversation. It's they are the forbidden door, basically. I mean, that's like the best example of it in all of wrestling, probably. And it's very possible Moxley loses to Homicide at Hammerstein. Like, do you think any of the AEW audience is going to think any less of John Moxley if he loses? I mean, he might win, but eventually he's going to lose to someone in GCW. I mean, it's going to happen. It doesn't take them down at all. It'd be different because I think there was a fear there for a while, right? With like Kenny Omega going to Impact and like, what's the perception if you lose to Sami Callihan? What's the perception if he's losing to Christian over there? And it was like, that was a little different maybe because I kind of understand that. Yeah, because he's the world champ, but and maybe you have the world champ and you have a couple guys kind of in that sphere. And I guess I'd kind of consider Moxley to be one of those guys, but he's almost the exception too, because he's so perfect for everything he's doing outside the company. He just fits in so well everywhere that you almost forget he's in AEW when he pops up other places, Yeah,
absolutely. That's a good point. Go ahead, Jeremy, sir.
Like Joseph said, like there's guys that within the sphere that can lose and be okay. Kingston, obviously. Moxley, I think, is another one. Omega was always a guy like you're presenting as the best wrestler in the world. You can't go to Impact and just lose to Moose.
Right.
I think the way to approach it will be, if you're Ring of Honor, this is how you have to look at it, is like, if you imagine the AEW audience as being this size, maybe this amount of it will ever have interest in another product, right? Like, I'm not looking at these numbers every other day, but I think we all are aware that, like, there's not a million people watching these shows other than AEW Dynamite. Like, that is what it is. I think you need to be a mathematician to figure that one out. So it's like, okay, who can we get that has a kind of cachet with that audience, that audience respects, that can also lose without hurting them? Kingston, again, obvious example. But also, you don't need to beat many of these guys. Like, do you not think it would be a big deal if Ring of Honor was in this model and 3 months into it, they said, in a month, we're running Florida or wherever. Florida's funny, actually. Let's do Florida. We're running Orlando in a month. Main event, we're bringing Cole, O'Reilly, and Fish home. And look, I'll be honest with you, I don't think those guys work particularly hard in that match. They're treated like a house show. But for your brand, this is why it makes so much sense to me, is like, how many guys in AEW have roots in Ring of Honor? So you can kind of do, you can do these like fun homecomings, right? Like Hangman's going to work a tag match. Again, is he going to treat it like the Tokyo Dome? No, he's not. And that isn't ideal, but you have to adjust to the situation of the industry. Right now, AEW's roster is more comparable to WWE of 2 years ago than it is any other company. It's ridiculous, their roster. You can either try and get inside of that and use some of it, or you can try and build your own army. And it's like, without contracts, man, good luck with that. Because with contracts, they were struggling. Like, talented guys in Ring of Honor, but in terms of the real top guys, top tier talent, there weren't a whole lot, if we're being honest, right at the end. Like, and that's just where we're at right now.
You mentioned, okay, you get a big, like, AEW match, or you get a big AEW star coming into it. It doesn't have to be, your example was, like, maybe you build towards, like, a Kingston and Gresham match.
Right.
Kingston can lose. It doesn't even have to be anything like that. You mentioned a guy like just Hangman, where he was at ROH compared to where he is now. If you just announce Hangman Page coming back to ROH, it can be like a fun little singles match against like Matt Taven or whoever, and he can beat Taven, or he can just do what you say. He can just do a tag team match, and people are gonna pop for it. Like, use it almost like the New Japan relationship. Obviously, do a better job on your side of what you're kind of giving back, and you do need to not like there can't be the over reliance on it either.
Mhm.
And I think that would be where ROH struggled before with the New Japan relationship is like, oh, we got the New Japan stars coming in. We don't have to like do anything else because they never built anybody else. But I guess if they're going to this model of like, hey, we're just kind of running like super shows essentially, and they don't feel they got to build anybody else, that would be a little bit different. I still think on the undercard is where you've got to start to cultivate some talent and start boosting guys.
You would have to look. Here's basically the deal here, and it's a shame, but it's the truth. You have to get in the game first before you want to compete, right?
Yeah.
And I think they need to get in the game. And the way of doing that to me right now, the way of getting any kind of traction, that is a big help, having those guys. Now, maybe in 2 years, when you've built something and you have a streaming service that can rely on itself and you have some guys that can stand alongside Gresham and you're confident in, maybe you loosen up that AEW partnership, right? Like, this is not a forever thing, but I think we all understand because we all was watching it, and I love for it. But, like, the way Ring of Honor was going, no one was talking about it. No one was watching it. You need to figure out. You can't just come back and be like, hang on, what's going on here? No one's watching our show. They never were. You have to do something different. I think that's just one little way they could do it, personally. I don't know, just, you've talked about this, but you feel free if you got anything to add on that topic.
No, not really, to be honest. Like, I just do like the idea of more guys like, Dana Garcia and Lee Moriarty and those guys that like could really just, they're so good and they're still years from their prime and they can be out there having really, really great matches. And they are getting, Dana Garcia is getting a lot of time on AEW, which has been great. Moriarty, not so much yet, but they've shown that like he's figured into their future. Absolutely. You don't go out there and have a match like he did with Punk and then just, they got nothing for you going forward. Like, but it'd be cool to see Gresham versus Moriarty, for instance, like for the ROH title. Like Moriarty can obviously afford to lose that match, but there'd be a lot of buzz coming out of that for both guys. So yeah, I'm on the same page with you guys when it comes to really all this stuff.
Yeah, and that is a core. You mentioned Moriarty and Garcia, who are now guys that are established, and we know how great they are. The big thing here, and it's not the most sexy answer because it will take some work, scouting needs to improve. Yeah. Once upon a time, Ring of Honor was the home of the best indie guys, and slowly but surely they got more complacent with that, and like, if we're being honest, as great as my like little quick fixes are and some of the stuff we're talking about, at core, you need to find the next crop of guys.
Because like Jeremy was saying, when they were only pushing the New Japan guys, and they should have been building this next. A lot of these guys that we're talking about right now that are in other companies and killing it elsewhere, we were left with like Matt Taven and Dalton Castle and like these guys who didn't even really fit in to what Ring of Honor traditionally had been the entire time. And
it's something we've talked about before. It's like, that basically in somewhere in the mid 2010s there, they got real comfortable with that. Like, well, we have the Young Bucks and we have a New Japan partnership. And what happened on the other side of the road was Evolve was kind of getting the guys that once would have been the Ring of Honor top guys, and they were getting a straight road to WWE, and that's hard. I get it, but that happened, and it changed the company's history.
And it was Gabe too,
of course,
yeah,
of course, it's always fucking Gabe. Speaking of such, unironically, not doing a bit. If you're desperate for a news story, rehire Gabe and pop me to know. I will do at least 1 week of podcast dedicated to that return of that product. I'll then stop caring inevitably, but it will rule. That's one thing I want to close on. I spoke about yesterday, and Jeremy and I kind of kicked around like the idea of Regal and Joe as executives. I'm not going to go that route here because I think like they're trying to run this cheap. So it would be an awesome brand like rehabilitation if you get Joe involved in this somehow, man. Like, he's probably the greatest Ring of Honor champ ever.
Yep.
I don't know what he can do in ring, but like, if some way, somehow he can be an ambassador or a face of this revival, for nerds like me, I think it would be pretty powerful, to be honest. And I don't know what he wants to do, right? Like, last time he was out, he went back. So we'll see. But that's just one thing that I thought was worth mentioning because, look, they just cut one of the greatest Ring of Honor guys ever. So it's worth bringing up. Anything else in our reimagination of of Ring of Honor, which we've actually done? We've actually stayed on topic. Incredible.
One thing I'll just say really quickly, just because I haven't heard anyone else talk about it. It's kind of random, but has to do with Ring of Honor. I saw that the WWE has released Ace Steel recently, who for Second City Saints. It would be really cool. I mean, if AEW could get Steel, Cabana, and CM Punk all together on screen for something in AEW, I think that'd be really, really cool. So I'll just throw that out there too.
Maybe it's a split screen. With the...
Yeah, I think
they might not be together. Well, I mean, at some point though, AEW is going to go there to some degree, right? I mean, like
I don't think so.
In the room,
I don't
you don't think so.
No.
You don't think that they want to? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying, from somebody who was a fan back in the day of those guys as a group and everything, just the fact that they're all it's all kind of right there, like for something. But I get there's a lot of baggage there. I get that.
It seems like it, right? It seems like there's still a lot of baggage, unfortunately. But I agree with you. I mean, to your point that you bring up, still like there's a lot of guys that were in this latest set of cuts that can offer a lot behind the camera.
Yeah,
which is very relevant because, like, look, let's be fair here. Delirious did a hell of a job as head booker for that first run he had. I think 2015 is one of Ring of Honor's best years. No one talks about it because Sinclair TV, we get it. Great year. I think, I don't know who's doing all of the booking now. I think he's still involved.
He is.
It's probably time to get like some form of new head coach over there. Just you can't just take 4 months off and expect all the issues to erase themselves. Like, I don't say he's a terrible booker, but I think his frailties as a booker became clear a long time ago, and they kind of kept going with that. So, but then again, I like the product the last couple of years, so maybe I'm being unfair there. I don't know.
But, I mean, and these releases are like good for Ring of Honor. Like you mentioned, Joe Regal. I'm with you. I think that they might be too pricey depending on what they want to do and what ROH wants to do. But a guy like Ace Steel would be very helpful. Gabe, I don't know what he wants to do, but he could be helpful. I know some of the writers, Rajan Singh, like he is apparently like very somebody you really want on your side and everything. Like there's people out there, because I think, and you mentioned, Joseph, like the scouting stuff is just, that's kind of got to be their biggest thing, because you mentioned the AEW partnership, and that gets you back in the game. You got to have a long-term goal of, all right, we just can't rely on AEW stuff. There has to be some effort into thinking more of a long-term big picture with a lot of this stuff. And I don't know, maybe they're not to that point yet. Maybe they just want to get back in the game. And if that's fine, that's fine. But like at some point, if you want to continue, you've got to think big picture, and you can't just continue to tread water for this whole time, because this is what happens when you just continue to tread water. What are the chances that like this reimagined ROH is basically the same thing, and then they just gimmick it with like, oh, the fans vote for the matches, and the fans, if you want this guy in the company, this is who we're gonna book, type of thing? Because they sort of did this like on Facebook, but they didn't go full bore with it. Like, what if they just like that's what the actual reimagined thing is just like, oh, we're just gonna listen to the fans more and just kind of Cyber Sunday this bullshit.
I'll be honest, I think that's more than they're gonna do. I think reimagine the product translates to we're not going to pay guys contracts anymore. I think it's going to be the exact same. I think they'll book tapings, they'll tape TV that no one will watch, and it will just be cheaper because they aren't paying. God bless them, they aren't paying some of these gentlemen 6 figures every year. Like, I know that sounds really cynical, but I'm not sure I'm sold on the idea that there's going to be a true reimagination take. I don't think they're going to have a conversation like this necessarily. I hope they do. I would love that, right? But like, I don't know, Jensen. Am I being unfair? I feel like there's not going to be too many changes on screen, really.
No, I'm feeling like you are. I mean, that'd be strange if they, like Jeremy said, they go Cyber Sunday, Taboo Tuesday on it. They're just like, and then they're rigging their own polls because they can't get access to certain guys. Yes, so they're like
cheapest guy.
Yeah, they have the least expensive booking fee. We'll just keep hitting that one. But no, I don't know. I really don't know, because I know that their intention, like we've said before, their intention was always to come back in April. But the vibe of Final Battle very much came across like, we plan on coming back in April, but like, if this is it, like this might be, you know what I mean? Like, enjoy this show because this might be it. So I think they're just kind of rolling with the punches right now and just seeing what's going to stick and what's going to work out for them. But at the very least, there's some sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, or I don't know about the end of the tunnel, but if they're going to continue to, at the very least, tread water for a little bit longer. Because, like, at the very least, the fans can look forward to April, whatever they wind up doing. From there, we don't know beyond that. But hopefully they give us a good idea of some of the talent they've got access to, kind of the direction of the company, and that kind of stuff in April. But yeah, I think it's just going to have to be just kind of touch and feel. Like, just this is an actual case of, like, we're going to have to actually let it see it play out, because I don't. It's just too much is unknown right now.
Now, folks, I don't actually know what this show is going to be until April. I love doing the watch-alongs, but I think this show was objectively, it was a nicer format when we would do a talk and then the watch-along rather than we were doing 2 watch-alongs. So I don't know what we're going to do. We'll probably decide next Monday. And then we'll message Jensen on Tuesday.
all hail. This is what we're doing.
Exactly. There you go. All caps as well, maybe. But I've enjoyed this. I think we actually had a nice conversation here. It's something that I'm very invested in and I'm interested by. And I think, we've all got these kind of differing relationships with the Ring of Honor brand, but we all want it to do well, right? Like, hopefully we'll look back on this show one day and realize they stole all of our good ideas. And we say professional wrestling.
My biggest fear now is after that last part is, like, we just had this, like, good, at least I think good, like, hour-long discussion. Yeah. And then they just come back, like, vote for the matches you want to see on Facebook.
It would roll with, like, Kerry Silkin was, like, watching all of the videos about Ring of Honor's return. He watched this one, was like, this all sucks. And then you said that, and he was like, there we go. Hope Kerry's still involved too, by the way. Great man. Anyway, let's just go home here.
Let me read some chats and stuff. Okay. JJ says, Jay White back in the Impact Zone. All hail. Wrong show, JJ.
That's filth. What is that doing on the Ring of Honor show? We're talking about a wrestling promotion here, brother.
I know, right? And then we got some bobber chats as well. Ricardo says, here's some love. Do you think that Deanna goes over Roxy for the ROH title and Roxy heads to the Fed? I want to see Deanna 2 belts. All hail.
I would say that's a quite likely final outcome there. Yes.
I guess Shabogan says, as much as some folks enjoyed the Pier rule set, isn't there a legitimate argument that Pier is the reason modern ROH had no real buzz in the first place? It is something like that seems like a niche within a niche.
I think it's a fair comment, but I don't think it's true. I think what actually happened was the Pure stuff, they were just too deep in the hole. Not everyone had stopped watching. They went dark for 6 months. I don't think, you could be right on that. I personally don't think it's the case. Maybe time will tell when they come back. Like, we'll see how that changes. But I think more than anything, it was like 2019 that killed them. They didn't have any buzz that year,
Yeah, and also back in the day, like the Pure title, when Nigel McGuinness held it, especially, like their Ring of Honor was at like a real high around that time. Like, yes. I don't think that like all the Pure wrestling ruined the show. And we also keep in mind, obviously this is something we want to spend time talking about, but we've talked about Delirious and his run as the booker and like stops and starts with the company and stuff. There was also a very, very key figure that was supposed to be in charge of a lot of this stuff, and a big link between a lot of these companies probably too, that obviously for a lot of reasons that couldn't continue. So it's like, that's probably a big key there too. They had probably had a lot of plans that went out the window and a certain somebody had to go. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, some of the stuff we pitched tonight was in motion. So it's tough for sure. They've not had it easy by any means.
Shabugan also says the rumor going around is that they're not focusing on the trios title. If I were ROH, I would I make a doable or a deal to have a trios tournament on AEW for the ROH trios titles ASAP. Keep the name hot and solve AEW's lack of trios.
I mean, it would roll. I mean, I'm big on the trios thing for AEW. They book so many of them. They may as well have belts, I think. But yeah, that'd be awesome. I don't know how feasible it is, but I like the idea for sure.
It does seem like they are focusing, according to the report, I think Alvarez is the one who said it, is they're basically going to focus on the women's, the tag, and the world title. I'm fine with like cutting out titles, especially if your world title is going to be more Pure stuff under Gresham. It gets redundant to also have a Pure title in that case. I'm fine with cutting off the titles. Having the trios title isn't like a big issue though if you're going to do like enough trios match and you're going to do the stables that they do. Like they're a faction based company with a lot of stuff. It's just you got to make them feel important because you go over to like New Japan, and they got the fucking 6-man titles that no one ever who could possibly care about.
I don't think we're going to get a lot of multi-mans. I think we're going to get TV tapings that feature like probably a set. You'll probably get like 10 singles matches, and they'll just spread them across the episodes. Because that's, I know it's, again, it sounds silly, but that's the cheapest way of doing it, right? Like I think they're trying to run this thing in a very, I'm going to use the word affordable fashion. I think they've lost a lot of money on this in the last couple of years, and they're losing money elsewhere, and they're not going to, I get your point completely, and, but it is worth, like, for all of, we've offered some solutions here, but, like, there's probably a lot of evidence this isn't going to be a great investment into the sport of professional wrestling when it comes back. It could just be, how do we get an hour out of this shit, huh? Like, how do we turn this taping around into 4 hours of TV? So we'll see. I don't know.
Shabogan also says, you guys don't think that Ring of Honor 2.0 is happening. I was looking forward to all the colors and the ex-football players who can't work.
No, I think I'd rather it die, man. I'm good on that.
Yeah.
Stephen Jensen, let the people know where they can find you at.
Y'all can follow me on Twitter at FightTalk _ FIGHTTALK _ You can use code FightTalk on independentwrestling.tv. Helps you out when you use that code. If y'all want to see my review of Impact Hard to Kill with Denise Salcedo, it's right here at Fightful, youtube.com/Fightful. What's coming up? I got Terminus this weekend. I'm excited for that here in Atlanta. And check out Degrassi Dudes every Friday. I know that SP3 was in the chat today. So that's on our Twitch channels and my Twitter page. So, yeah, check that stuff out. And I'll be live tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, live rounds. Me and Doug will be talking about AEW Dynamite, a whole bunch of wrestling stuff. We're going to do our top 10 wrestling action figures of 2021. So going to be fun tonight. That's 10 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/RVD Tito for life. So that's it. Thanks guys again for, another good show.
Oh, hell, brother.
Wait, sorry, Joel. I always forget to mention this. YouTube or Fightful Twitch. Everyone watch on Thursdays. Jeremy's there a lot of the time also. We play a lot of Mario Kart. We're going to be playing some new stuff. We play N64 sometimes. So check that out. Twitch.tv/Fightful Gaming every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, hell. I'm going to go straight to the Late Night Grim platform, latenightgrim.com. Sign up for $1. The lads are already watching Dark live. I hope it didn't hurt our viewership, Jeremy. I hope they got no viewers over there to prove my star.
For an ROH show, honestly, like, I know we enjoyed the watch along certain aspects of it. Like, we're not viewership guys anymore because our viewership now sucks. But
my God, does it? I thought it was pretty good. Okay,
yeah, it is. But like the roundtable stuff works way better than just the watch along stuff.
Let's just do this every week for a different promotion.
NWA just reimagine every promotion.
I'm not even true. Like, NWA next week could be something. I don't know. I've got some ideas. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
So I'm going to be there literally in a couple minutes here. Tomorrow night, I'm doing a free Dynamite review via the Late Night Grim platform. You can either, if you just follow me on Twitter, I'll do the link. But the channel's actually up now, so you can subscribe and you'll get that. So that'll be immediately after Dynamite. I'm doing a pre-stream with Jeremy too. Right? We do that, don't we? That's the thing we do.
Yes. And somebody will be on, whoever I decide to message at 5 o'clock tomorrow to do our Dynamite pre-show.
So that's happening. Distraction on Thursday. Many things, many grins ahead, folks. I'll see you on latenightgrin.com.
I actually have stuff to plug. Tomorrow we'll be on Twitch kicking the shit out of Joel Pearl in SmackDown vs. Raw 07. Did not Twitch today. I have stepfatherly duties to attend to. And also tomorrow, yes, the Dynamite pre-show with myself, Joseph, and somebody else. I'll let everyone know at 5 o'clock when that happens. Thursday, it is the Distraction show at 3. I think we're going to do a post show this week, Joseph, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it feels like we haven't done one of those in about a year.
And I think, and Jeremy, I haven't pitched this to you, but I'm throwing out there now. I think a good thing to do this week on the Distraction main is let's look at what we would like to see / what we expect to see from all of the promotions in 2022. Let's do a broad
Okay.
You know, because the year went by and I think I missed the last show of the year. So like, I like to do that kind of stuff. So we'll have a look at that this week maybe, because you know, rather than us spending an hour every Thursday just being like, man, that Dynamite angle was bad, huh? So you know, I don't like getting abused via the chat. So we'll just talk about WWE and bury that instead. They like when we do that.
All right. So that'll be Thursday. We'll do a post show where we'll talk about how Dynamite was very bad on the post show. Friday will be on twitch.tv/Fightful Gaming. I think Joe Pearl and I we're gonna start the new campaign. I think we're gonna play It Takes Two. We're gonna do our new campaign mode on that next week. This will potentially pop you, Stephen Jensen. Next week, I recorded it today. I got an interview with Adam Abdallah, co-founder, co-owner of Jersey Championship Wrestling, the man behind Orange Crush. If you guys have seen the Orange Crush, the magazine, the journal that they do. I talked to him. It's tremendous stuff that they do there. I talked to him for about 40 minutes. We talked about the Indie Hall of Fame that's running next week. Talked about the Orange Crush Journal, and we talked about Jersey Championship Wrestling. So really fun interview. Got a couple articles coming out from that, and the full interview will be right here on the Distraction Channel next week.
Dude, that's badass. Yeah. Shout out Dave Prazak going into that Hall of Fame with CM Punk and Dustin.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very cool shit.
Yeah. Shout out to Orange Crush. They take very good pictures of cool guys smoking cigarettes all the time.
That's it, man. That's
It really
that's
is.
the description right there. That's the truth. Yeah, it's awesome.
So everybody check that out next week. I'm gonna start ramping up content on the site on this channel again with interview stuffs and different things. Got some ideas. So we'll be back tomorrow on the channel. Dynamite pre-show. Talk to y'all then. Appreciate y'all hanging out.